Hello folks, and welcome to our next Parent Council training session titled Parent Council Essentials. The presenters for this session is myself. I'm Chair Leanne. I'm Chair of Glasgow City Parents Group, and we've got Kathryn Farrow, who leads in the Parent Partnership from Glasgow City Council. So we'll just get stuck right in. I'm going to pass you over to Kathryn for the first part of the slides, and then I'll take over from there.
Thanks, Leanne. It's a pleasure to be delivering another session. I've got a bit of a croaky voice tonight, so hopefully it's still clear. So you can see there what we aim to cover. Lots on, what Parent Council set up to do, the role of your office bearers, finance and AGM. We have covered quite a lot of this in some of the other videos, so we will touch on these points, but to get more detail, it is worth taking a look at some of the other videos specifically on those topics that have already been uploaded. We're also going to be recording a session on constitution and policies, so much more detail about that in the specific videos. So happy to move on to the next slide, Leanne. Okay, so the 2006 Parental Involvement Act, it's a very old act, but it has been, it's what we still have to work with. There are no plans at government in the short term for that act to be updated. So the act, we call it the act, but it's actually the Scottish Schools 2006 Parental Involvement Act states that every school has a parent forum. Now that gets a bit confused sometimes because people think that the small group that meets is actually the parent forum, but the parent forum is every child in a school. So it's important to understand the terminology around this. The parent council then is the group of parents that are selected by members of the parent forum to represent all parents at the school. So parent forum is the big group, parent council is the small group that meets with school staff to deal with issues that are relevant to all parents and carers in the school. So a parent council isn't run by the school, the head teacher can't chair it, I can't come out and chair it. The clue is in the title. A parent council is a group that is run by parents and it must be chaired by a parent or carer in the school. So that's quite important because I've gone into some parent councils and where they are struggling to know what to do, sometimes find the head teacher running meetings. That shouldn't be happening. Parent council needs to be run by the parents who are members of the group. So what are the sorts of things that a parent council can do? And, I want to stress that there's a lot that a parent council can do, but sometimes we find that parent councils are only doing fundraising. So fundraising is something that you can do, but it's not what parent councils were actually established to do. So the parent council is there to support the school in its work with pupils, and it's all about raising the standards and quality of the education at the school. And the school needs to hear the views of parents. If it's going to make things better and raise the standard for all families, they need to get feedback from parents and carers through the parent council about the sorts of things that would make it better. So to do this, the parent council must talk and listen to parents at the school, and that's actually, a big challenge for parent councils. We have to remember that everybody on a parent council is a volunteer, but you can keep that simple, and it's about good communication always. So how do you keep your parents and carers informed? And how do you obtain their views? And it's not enough to say that we're out chatting at the school gate. Sometimes you have to do that in another way, maybe putting out a brief survey or gathering views at a parents' night. But you do need to actually enter into dialogue with those that you are representing. So it's about promoting contact between all of those with an interest in the school. And when a parent council works well, it's a really good group because head teachers tell us that parent councils are a fantastic focus group when they work well. They can go to their parent council to discuss new ideas. They can go to the parent council to hear about the things that are difficult. So some people tell us that they are struggling with things like parent pay, with seesaw. Schools need to hear those views if they're going to actually make them work better. So all of that open dialogue that goes on at a parent council is absolutely crucial to raising the standards for everybody in the school. A parent council absolutely has to report back to everybody at least once a year. I always say that if you're only reporting back once a year, it's not enough, but that's what is actually stated in the 2006 Act. So it's in the legislation that where a parent council is established, it must report back to everybody, usually at the AGM. And that's why we'll give you links to sample reports that you can use as a basis for doing that written reporting, because sometimes parent councils will say we hold an AGM and nobody comes. It's not enough to say, you know, we gave a report at the AGM. You should be telling everybody what you have done in the past year on their behalf. And we have helped you to simplify that. So absolutely vital that that happens, and the financial reporting should happen at the same time. So I still find that in some schools it hasn't been happening. Over COVID, a lot of this slipped. I'm pleased to report that most people are getting back on track, but in some schools that annual reporting maybe isn't happening in the way that it should. Fundraising, as I mentioned, is something that a parent council can do, always being mindful of the cost of the school day. We have a video on that too, so please watch that if you are about to embark on fundraising. But fundraising isn't the be all and end all for a parent council, and it shouldn't be the only thing that you do. If a school was to be inspected, so if the inspectors came, they're probably not going to be very interested in what you've done for fundraising. They might look at it because obviously fundraising supports the work of a school, but it's all the other things that I've described that the inspectors would want to engage in. How is the school consulting the parent council on key issues? What are the, you know, what's the feedback from parents on those key issues? How do you keep people informed in the, you know, the parent and carer community? So always worth mentioning, fundraising is, you know, can be a good thing, but it shouldn't be the only thing. So parent councils can request and be given advice by the local authority and head teacher. People, you know, on parent councils regularly come to me for advice. I've been giving out advice today about how to open up an online meeting and to keep that calm, because there are a few tempers raised about an issue in the school. So I would give advice, and the head teacher has also given advice. So parent councils can come to us for that at any time. That's my job at the authority, and at school level, the head teacher is the principal advisor to the parent council. So if asked, we would be expected to respond. Importantly, parents can make representation on general matters. So if you're on a parent council, you're not on there to discuss your child's issues. You're on there because you have an interest in making things better for all parents and carers in the school. So it's not an opportunity to go along and, you know, speak to the head teacher and any school staff on the group about your own issues. You are there because you are volunteering to act on behalf of everybody. Parent councils can be involved, or they are involved. They have an entitlement to be involved in the appointment of head teachers and deputies in the school. That's a separate training course that Leanne hosts for me on this platform that I deliver at least once every term. And we've never really had this because we try to resolve things. Things are best resolved at local level. It's the same with parental complaints. Parents go to MPs, MSPs, all over the place to raise complaints. All roads lead back to the school, because we can only really resolve things at school level, because that's the place where we can put a fix in place. And it's the same if a parent council is not having its issues resolved by the local authority or by the school. They have a right under this legislation to go to HMIE, so to the school inspectors, to Education Scotland. I am not aware of that ever having had to happen, because we have another place that we can go if it's not resolved by me, if it's not resolved by the school. We have membership of Connect, which includes mediation support. So we have lots of other places, because if parents took this to HMIE, they would just come right back to the school and the local authority to find a way to get it fixed. So I'm pleased to report in all of the time that we've had this Act that I have not been aware of a parent council ever having had to go to HMIE, because we can fix it in other ways. So at the bottom of this slide, you'll see that parent councils can't discuss individual members of staff, either former or current. So, you know, things that would be off limits would be going to a parent council meeting to discuss why the primary 4 teacher has been off long-term sick. It's not appropriate. We can't talk about pupils either. The dignity of all has to be respected. So that's back again to the bit about this isn't about personal issues, this is about general issues, and the parent council should always be dealing in the general. And it's not to say that, you know, if there's a long-term absence in a class, it may be that without getting into the detail of the individual teacher, you can ask as a parent council, what are the plans for covering that class in the absence of a staff member? But it's not getting into the detail of that, because that is absolutely off limits. So key issues for your parent council to consider. How are you going to represent the views of parents? So how are you going to hear what their views are? And it's not about throwing it open on Facebook. Sometimes parent councils will have an issue that they want to get views about. So they may pull together a short questionnaire for everybody in the school. So it could be some kind of smart survey or whatever platform you're using. So you want to hear what everybody thinks about an issue. Maybe it's about changing the uniform. It's maybe about moving to having less branding on uniforms. How do you gather those views? Because just standing at the school gate will not get you a comprehensive viewpoint. And the school can help with that. Schools are more than happy to help with putting out surveys, you know, doing things if you don't have your own means of doing that. So think carefully how you're going to get those views. It might be that you set up a flip chart stand at a parents' night when most parents and carers are going to be in the building, and ask a key question. So that question might be about how would you like the parent council to communicate with you, and you might give them 1 or 2 options. So really quite important that you think, what do you need to get the views on, and work with the school on that. So how are you going to be open and accountable to members of the parent forum? So thinking about an issue that I've discussed with a parent council recently, it's an issue about traffic, which the parent council has been discussing, but there's a group of parents who have gone off and they have come up with they've opened up their own petition, which is separate to the parent council. So the parent council has advertised that it's going to be talking about this, and there's an elected member coming along. So the meeting's open, not that everybody can go along and start, you know, screaming the odds about the issues that they're angry about. But the parent council is open, and people are welcome to go along and listen to that, because the action being taken by the parent council on transport is being taken on behalf of everybody. So opening it up is a good thing to do with appropriate, you know, steps in place to keep the meeting calm. What kind of partnership should you have as a parent council with the school and the wider community? And some parent councils are really strongly linked to their community, and because those links are so strong, they maybe have some co-opted members from there. And deciding as a parent council, what are you going to be your main areas of interest or activity? And, you know, asking parents, what, even if you were to ask parents, what are the important issues for you that you think the parent council should be discussing with the school? You know, you're not going to cover everything. You might have a small list, but you know, you get their views in, and then you decide what is feasible as a parent council, and you come up with your work plan. And you might have a work plan for the year. So you're going to look at school communication, you're going to look at homework, and you're going to look at cost of the school day. That's more than enough for a parent council to be dealing with. So you can't do everything. Sometimes parents want you to do everything, especially when it comes to organising events. Parent councils come under, you know, lots of pressure, and sometimes there's 3 or 4 people doing everything, and the parents out in the community are saying there aren't enough discos, there aren't enough this, there aren't enough that, but they won't volunteer. So it's about saying the parent council is going to be doing this, and there will be X number of events throughout the year. If you want more, volunteer, come and help us, because we can't do this alone. And that's really leads us nicely onto that final bullet point. How can you involve more parents in what the parent council does? And it may be that parents are only interested in specific things. So, you know, as a parent council, you've identified what your work plan is. Some parents are saying, well, I'm not interested in sitting down and talking to the school about, you know, the spending of pupil equity fund, but I would be interested in helping out with social events. So you might actually create a subgroup that deals with them so that your meetings don't become bogged down in those social events and fundraising. So think about the ways that you can bring other people in. The role of the head teacher, as I've said, they are your link at school level. They are your principal advisor. So they have got a right and a duty to attend parent council meetings. They're not a member of the group, and they would work there supporting you in that role, to engage with the school and to improve things for everybody. They'll help you to make links to learning in the curriculum. They'll tell you what the pupil equity fund's being spent on. They'll talk to you about what's in the school improvement plan. They should be asking for your thoughts and your views on these things. So really important that you open up dialogue on all of this. School, homeschool communication, another important area, because lots of things are being put onto platforms like Seesaw and Showbie and others, and some parents are telling us that they are struggling to access them. So the parent council needs to be feeding that back to the school, and the school then needs to be adapting things to try to, to make that easier for the parents who are reporting problems. So that kind of two-way street with the school is really important. The parent council should be kept informed by the head teacher on what's happening in the school and those development plans, those improvement plans. And there is also an opportunity to link the parent council to staff. So if the staff are doing something interesting in the school, the head teacher might suggest to the parent council that staff member could be invited to come along and report on maybe the plans for play-based learning or for outdoor learning. All of these, that staff member doesn't need to become a co-opted member, but the head teacher would be suggesting to the parent council that they could come along and do a presentation, and they might be looking for parent helpers, they might be looking for a little bit of funding. So it's not up to the head teacher to decide what's on the agenda. They would come to you and say, Joe Blogs would like to come and talk to you about outdoor learning. Would that be okay for a future agenda? So that's how that one works. So the head teacher must have regard to any representation received from the parent council and must respond. Now, you have to that has to be reasonable. The worst thing that can happen is that a head teacher turns up at a parent council meeting and the parents have got a list of gripes. It's about planning ahead. It's about having, your agenda set out and letting the head teacher know the sorts of things that you might want to discuss. So I've chaired a parent council in the past, and I would always have probably an email exchange with the head teacher ahead of meetings to say, here are the things that have come up from parents. Are you okay to give a response to that on the night? Giving them a bit of time. They might have to bring somebody else in to give a fuller. So something like Duke of Edinburgh was a good example. They would say, I can't personally respond to it. I can either invite the staff member along or I can get a report from them. So you have to tell them ahead what the questions are that are coming up, so that they can be well prepared for the meeting, because no head teacher should ever feel hijacked at that meeting. So good two-way dialogue. And likewise, when I was having that exchange with the head teacher, he would say to me, the things that have come up in school, we've got the exam results are all in. I'd like to talk to the parent council about school performance, or any other issues, maybe about building work that was going to be happening. So then the agenda would be formed and everybody was familiar what was going to be on it, and everybody could prepare adequately to discuss those items. Again, the head teacher doesn't have an automatic right to a slot at every meeting. Most parent councils give the head teachers that slot because it makes sense if you have this partnership that the head teacher can give a bit of an update, but it's not an automatic right because the parent council is a parent meeting first and foremost. The head teacher must report once a year to the Parent Council or the Parent Forum, or to the Parent Forum, and that's generally done at the AGM. So it's covering school performance and what the plans are for the school going forward, always with an improvement agenda at the heart of it. And that AGM, a good AGM, would have the head teacher giving a report on the work of the school and the chair of the Parent Council giving a report on the work of the Parent Council. So those two things can happen in the same meeting, and a summary must be sent to every member because they don't come along. So in the same way that you must, as a Parent Council, report to your Parent Forum once a year, that head teacher report would be included too. So that's the way to structure your AGM to fulfil that. So your other office bearers, the chairperson, it's a key role in actually making that meeting work smoothly, make the whole thing tick, deal with the timing of the meeting. And as I've said there, I used to liaise as a chair with the head teacher about the agenda, but we had a paid clerk, so I also sent those items so that the clerk could prepare the agenda and get it sent out to everybody. So the chair is the person who is guiding the group in the same way that Leanne guides the work of Glasgow City Parents Group. Parent Council chairs at school level are doing the same. It's somebody who is leading that process. And the chair would run the meeting, get through it on time. And also, as I said to a Parent Council chair today, you're having a meeting on Zoom. You think that there's going to be lots of people attending this, set out the ground rules from the start, get a wingman or wingwoman to manage the chat online and get everybody on mute. Only get people to speak when you decide that you have time to do that on the agenda. So it's whether you're doing it online or whether you're doing it face to face, you are the person that is controlling that meeting and keeping good order so that you get through the business. So you're ensuring fair discussion and allowing everyone to have their say. So if you're doing this on Zoom and people are firing lots of things into the chat, the person who's managing the chat for you at that meeting might say, there's quite a lot of questions coming up about X or Y. Have we got time to maybe answer two questions, the two main questions that are being posted, but also taking things off that chat and making sure that it is recorded so that if we can't deal with it on the night, it is dealt with elsewhere. So the chair would also summarise any decisions made, clarify further action of there's so many things have been posted there. We need time to discuss or consider them, and we'll bring it back as a future agenda item. We'll keep it as a rolling item so that we do keep this issue moving on and making sure that those decisions are carried out. So what makes a good chair? Actually it's not knowing every bit of the legislation. It's good to be familiar with it, even to look at the guidance that goes with the legislation, but it is being familiar with how your Parent Council should work, knowing your constitution, knowing your policies, preparing for the meeting in advance, having that dialogue with the head teacher and your clerk or your secretary, whoever, to make sure that everybody who's coming along knows what they're coming to speak about. Think about the length and priority of items. So you might say we're going to spend half an hour on this and then 10 minutes on each of the other items. Get that agenda out in advance and, set that time limit. How long have you got? Start the meeting on time and finishing time, because people might have childcare that they have in place. So, you don't want to say to them, oh, you need a babysitter for an hour and a half, and then you have a 2.5 hour meeting. That person won't come back. So it's important to run that meeting efficiently so that people know it's an hour and a half of a meeting. And if I go to that, then, I can keep going to that because that is manageable. So being organised, I would say, is the greatest skill that a chair can have. And I think I look at Leanne when I say that, because Leanne is a very, very organised chair of the city group. She has to be organised because otherwise, you're not efficient. So highly organised, that's maybe the bullet point I would add to that slide in the future. So your secretary or clerk, you have your Parent Council budget. It's up to you to decide whether you want to actually have somebody paid in this role. And we always used to think about this as a slight difference between the role of clerk and secretary. So even when we have a paid clerk, as we used to call them, they would be the person that was getting the agendas out, getting the minutes out, sorting all of that. But if you had a parent who was in the secretary role, so that, you know, the clerk wouldn't be writing letters on behalf of the parent council or sending emails to people like councillors. So maybe you've got a traffic issue and you want to contact your local elected members. It wouldn't be your paid clerk that would do that. You could have somebody on your parent council that deals with all correspondence, so more of a secretarial role. So it's supporting that communication however you decide to do it. You need somebody that's going to keep your paperwork organised. Knowing how long people have been on your parent council as well is something that should be recorded, because often people go on to parent councils, they don't know how long they've been on, they don't know how long they need to be on until they need to step down. So have somebody keeping a record of all of that is really important. So getting the minutes done and ensuring that members receive all the necessary paperwork ahead. As I said, it can be paid. We give you the money to be able to do that. We don't tell you how much to pay. We advise that it should be around the Glasgow living wage and paid per work done. So if it's a 1 hour meeting, you pay them for 1 hour. If it's a 2 hour meeting, you pay them for 2 hours, but also paying them for any preparation that's done and any tidying up of minutes after the meeting, because that takes time. So look at how long the task is and pay accordingly. So then it would be up to them to get the minutes probably to the chair for checking. I always got my vice chair to check them too. And I sent my minutes to the head teacher just to check that everything attributed to them had been recorded accurately. So after that, the clerk would then send out the minutes, but it's important. And then posting those minutes publicly, because you are representing all parents. So where are those minutes going so that everybody can see them? Treasurer, an absolutely crucial role. Sometimes parent councils set this up as a shared role because parents feel that dealing with money is such an important matter that it's good to have a couple of people doing it. Now, this is all covered in great detail in the fundraising and you know, sort of in that particular video. So there's more that we go through there. But the treasurers are responsible for the proper handling of finance, but not for, you know, the raising or spending of money. They are the people who need to have a really accurate record system, and this is a big issue in the city still, that we don't have enough accurate recording, and we don't have good handover of accurate recording from one group of people to another. Maintaining the bank account. And also making sure that if people are going to be leaving the parent council and they are signatories, that they are taken off that bank account before they disappear, because this is leading to problems in the system. But the treasurer really should be noting all money in and out, keeping a good record of that, keeping receipts. If people are handed money for something, then we need a receipt to say that that parent got money for a specific item or items. So good recording. Please watch the video dealing with this in a lot more detail. And there should be an update at every parent council meeting on the current state of the bank account. And if you have online banking, log in and show people who are at the meeting. And if you're on a Zoom meeting, you can log in and you can screen share and show it there. But there must be a report at every meeting. And if parent councils did this, less would go wrong. Co-opted members, what the term co-opted means is invited, and they are people who are invited by your parent council really to add value to the work that you do. So parents can't be co-opted because they would have to stand as parent members. In a denominational school, so in our Catholic schools, the parent council must co-opt somebody from the church. And that is generally done, you know, through a request to the parish priest to nominate. Either it would be the parish priest who would come on, or it would be somebody nominated by the parish priest to take that role. And that will be reflected in the constitution of a Roman Catholic school. But Teachers need to be co-opted too. So in general, what we find on parent councils is that they would be co-opting staff members, and that might be teaching and non-teaching. Some parent councils have got community members, but it needs to be an obvious community group that's doing lots of work with the parent council. Otherwise, these groups are not going to have the time to let somebody be co-opted on. So you need to think about who you would be inviting to join your parent council. Parents must always outnumber co-opted members because it's a parent group first and foremost. So parents need to be in the majority. You can see there that, you know, we've got a church co-optee, we've got a staff co-optee, and that staff member is different from the head teacher. And sometimes schools will offer that out on an annual basis. So they'll put the opportunity out every year. Anybody on the staff interested in being co-opted on to the parent council, and they would come on and they would give you that insight. They would gain the insight to, you know, the parental perspective, but they will also give you insight to, you know, other areas of the school experience. They'll come, they might be somebody who's involved with pupil council. So they're on the parent council and they're reporting back from them. So they would keep you informed about school policies and practices, and likewise they would be taking back, along with the head teacher, keeping the staff informed about what the parent council is actually doing as a group. And that staff member, like the head teacher, could go off and find opportunities to bring other staff members in on an ad hoc. They don't have to become full co-opted members, but maybe just to come and present at an individual meeting because they're doing something really interesting in the school. So that's what the staff member, the staff co-optee would do, and that's what the church co-optee would do. There are some, I'm thinking about some of the schools in the Govan Hill area where there is a, you know, there's a particular member of, it's a family support worker working with lots of schools, and they have been co-opted on because they are so intensively involved with the parent council in the area. So it would be obvious if there's people that you think would add value at local level, and you don't need to co-opt anybody on if you feel that that's not appropriate. So it's a choice that you make as a group, and your constitution will tell you how many co-opted members you can have and where they would be drawn from. So parent council finances, as I said, covered in the video, but you received £400. You receive £400 annually. That money was downloaded in the summer. The aim is to get that out to parent councils in April, May, but there was a lot of checking needed to be done this year, and that took a while because people weren't responding to the emails that were sent out. So ideally, we want to get that out just after the beginning of the new financial year. So all being well, that's when every parent council gets their funding. Parent councils, as I said, they also fundraise, they might apply for grants, all covered in that particular video, and there might be a little bit of bank interest now that interest rates are beginning to rise. So that's generally where the parent council's funding comes from. All of this, again, I'd refer you to the other video, but what I would say is that if you're going to be fundraising at all, I think be mindful of the cost of the school day and not asking people for too much. It may be that going to look for grant money is a better way to bring in a larger sum of money for less effort. But when a parent council raises funds, you have to, it's good to know beforehand what you're actually raising funds for, because there are too many cases where funds have been raised and the people who've raised them seem to be wanting to make the decision about how that money's spent, and some of it is about their own personal glory sometimes in a community, that we raised the money for this and we want the kudos for this. The money is raised to benefit all children, and all parents are generally putting their hands in their pocket to do it. But there should be a discussion about what the school actually wants, because there's examples of parent councils buying things and buying, things that just can't be installed in a school playground because there are rules about that. So I would say that you need to have dialogue at all times about what you are going to buy with that as a parent council, because the school, you have to be consistent with how the school operates, how our health and safety operates, but also about the ethos of the school. If this is a school that's really promoting healthy eating, and at every holiday you want to fill the children full of chocolate, that's kind of against the school's healthy eating policy. And it's not to say that, you know, we're not being killjoy that the kids can't ever have a selection box or an Easter egg, but can we do something else with the money for some of those events? So good discussion so that the parent council and the school are all pulling in the same direction. So the parent council has responsibility for raising and spending the money, but please do it in partnership with the school, and start out at the beginning of the year by saying we're going to do 2 fundraising events, and the money this year is going to be spent on buying playground games so that the children have more to do during breaks, or we're going to buy games for wet play when they're stuck in the school building in the Scottish weather. So have that, and then every time a parent contributes, they know what they're contributing to, because this goes wrong quite a lot on our parent councils. So reporting back, as I said, you have to report back to all parents on the finances once per year. It should be a set of accounts that have been checked by somebody independent of the parent council. But you should be having regular updates at your parent council meeting, at every meeting. How much money have we got in the bank, and how can we actually prove that's what we've got in the bank based on the paperwork that's available to us? But I'm not going to go into that in too much detail because it's covered in the parent council finances video. Again, with banking, lots of this is covered, but just be really, really careful that all money is banked, that you've not got large sums of money floating around, that nobody knows how much each person has got. If there are still checks, make sure that you don't give out any blank checks. Don't ever count cash on your own. Some of these are really simple things. Vigilant around cybersecurity. If you have online banking, it's maybe just if you've got one treasurer with somebody supporting them, they're the only 2 people that need to get, to know how to get in. There's no point in just one person having those login details, because, you could be hit by a bus, and then how do we get into the account? So it's important that, the people who need to know, but it's not something that's passed around widely how to get in there. Don't do anything through personal accounts. I've heard of parents using their own money and then waiting for the money coming in from us to claim it back. Anything, if those goods were stolen and they'd been paid for through a personal account, the insurance wouldn't kick in. So please don't do it. It should not happen. And the insurance, again, lots more detail in the other video. So referring you on to that.
Okay, so it's over to me now, Kathryn. You can rest your voice for a wee minute or two. Thank you. So we've covered like what parent councils are supposed to do, the office bearers and finances. Now we're going to cover the main kind of activity that parent councils should be taking part in and facilitating, and that's meetings. And as well as your regular kind of ongoing meetings, one of the most important meetings that you have a duty to hold each year, which I think Kathryn's already mentioned, is an annual general meeting, or we all call them AGMs. So at an AGM, it's your duty to be able to report back to your parent forum, and there is a legal requirement there. So you do have, like, when you're signing up to your parent council, like, you're agreeing to be doing this on a yearly basis. We know that some people can sometimes get out of the habit of holding these meetings, but you need to be quite diligent with that and make sure that you are holding them on an annual basis. The Parental Involvement Act states that parent councils need to report back to the parent forum. And also on top of that, it's a good way of fostering that good two-way communication, because as we know, if you put out surveys, you don't always get the responses back that you're maybe looking for. Sometimes when you're in the playground, you'll have parents coming up to you and trying to chat to you at that point, but you might pick your child up and it's not the best point to catch you. So an AGM is a great way to try and encourage new parents to get involved and hear the viewpoint from a variety of different parents. So you need to be holding it at least once a year. Your chair plays a big part in this. So your chairperson should be reporting back on the activities over the past year. So you're retrospectively looking back, and you get to report back on everything that your parent council has achieved or worked on over that last year. Now, it doesn't need to be chapter and verse. It's a simple report. I'm sure not everybody wants to be sitting there all night, but it's really just so that you can show your parent council how active you've been, and also highlight any of your successes and thank anybody who's been involved in that, because we are volunteers, and don't be frightened of kind of playing your blowing your own trumpet. If you have had successes throughout the year as a parent council, then make sure everybody knows about all the hard work of you and your volunteers that you've put into that. Your AGM is also really important that you present on your annual accounts. Again, we won't get into all the financial stuff in too much detail. That is on some of our other videos like Kathryn has mentioned, but that's probably the two main elements of a parent council AGM, is that you as a parent council are reporting on your overall activity, but then you're also reporting on your financial activity. And so you should be able to be open and transparent about that by showing your annual reporting of those finances. And that's where you would talk about any fundraising, what it's been spent on, maybe show some pictures if it's been outdoor equipment or something like that. So it's a great way to be really transparent with your parent forum. Now, one thing that you do have to do when it comes to an AGM, you need to give proper advance notice, and you need to be making sure that you're advertising it to your parent forum. So there's no good in holding an AGM that you've decided within 2 days or within a week, let's hold an AGM next week, and the only people that know about it is the people sitting on your parent council or some of the school staff. That's just not enough, really. We've already said you've got a legal requirement. So best practice we would normally advise is that start advertising it around 2 weeks before the date is set. So ideally your date would already be set, and it would be roughly about the same time each year. And then you start advertising it about 2 weeks prior to it, and that's when you would send out the agenda as well. So don't just stick out a message saying, oh, our AGM is 2 weeks on Thursday, come along and join us. It would be great to see you there. That's really not that enticing for people. So make sure that you're sharing in advance what the agenda is. You will also need to share any policies or constitutions if you are planning to amend them. You will need to share them in advance also. So just put a wee bit more effort into it to make sure that you're trying to encourage people to come along. So in terms of what you do report on at your AGM, we are here to support you as always. So the slide that you see on your screen just now is actually exemplars on reporting back. So we've got a primary one, a secondary one, and we also have an agenda there. So the links to the slide will be in the YouTube description. So feel free to click on that. You can work your way through the slides again. And you will also be able to click on these 3 links that will open up sample documents. And then it's just a case of tweaking them appropriately for your parent council. And that's it, job done. So again, we go into this in a lot more detail, and there's more links, interactive links in our AGM training, which is a separate video in full on our YouTube channel. I've already kind of mentioned this, any of your meetings at all, not just your AGM, they should be getting advertised. We hear from parent councils all the time, oh, we can never get anybody to join our parent council, nobody comes along. Well, they're not going to come along or join it if you're not advertising it. And I know it can feel a bit like a thankless task, but if you stop advertising that and putting that information out there into the parent forum, then you're not going to get anybody new at all joining. So make sure that you are advertising it. Again, I would really advise, don't just put out, oh, we're having a parent council meeting on Monday, please come along. Because personally, for me, I wouldn't go to a meeting if I didn't know what was being discussed in the meeting. I want to know that I'm giving up my time for some really interesting discussions. So I think it would always be helpful to try and share your agenda of that meeting coming up, or just some of the talking points that you're going to be discussing, because there is some talking points, as we know, across the school community that brings in more of a crowd than others, that more people are interested in. So you might be able to entice more people along your meetings. I've got some examples here of where you can advertise your meetings. So in years gone by, it was generally just a letter in a school bag. But thanks to the pandemic and the push along in terms of digital, most schools now communicate with parents through email or through a school app or even through social media. So I would say use all those channels that are available to you. Don't just pick one, because you're probably will get more of an uptake by using multiple channels. Certainly, if you don't have your own emailing list, you can ask the school to put a communications out for you. So just make sure that you've got that nice and clear, and it's an easy job then for the school to just copy and paste and send it out. We've got a multitude of school apps across all sectors. So you've got Showbase, Seesaw, Microsoft Teams, Piota, Show My Homework. Speak to your school and ask them, is there a possibility that you would be able to advertise our meetings for us through that? Because chances are many parents are going on there to check in with their child's learning or check for updates. So that might be your best bet. Social media is a good way to advertise it, but just remember, if you're only advertising it on your parent council social media, you're not really capturing everyone. Because as we probably know, and we know ourselves, and I know from speaking to a variety of parent councils, their social media channels are not as popular maybe as the school's channels, and also not everybody, would you believe it or not, in 2023 use social media. So just make sure that you're using a variety of these methods. And one thing I would recommend, if you're not already using it, to make your invites look more inviting, I would recommend you use a free online application called Canva. You can make letters, posters, social media posts, like more engaging, more colourful. Think of clip art, but for the modern age. And it's really easy to use. And it just means when you are posting anything out by an email or on social media, it's a lot more engaging. I actually think some of this slide might have been made on Canva, some of the graphics. And certainly if you follow our social media channels, many of our graphics are made on Canva. So it's free to sign up. And I highly recommend you use it. Again, I think I go into more detail about it on our social media training on our YouTube channel as well. So what is a good meeting? A good meeting will have a clear purpose. It will have an agenda, which is really helpful, because that helps you as a chairperson who should be leading that meeting, helps you stay focused and work your way through, because meetings can go off in little tangents. You need a suitable venue. Now, we know that recently there's been a lot of chatter around trying to hold your meetings in school. Do you hold them online? Do you pay for your lets? It's entirely up to you as a parent council where you hold your meeting. The head teacher does have a duty to attend, remember that. But you also have to check in with the letting information. So from now on, parent council need to book their own school lets and they need to be paying for them. All this information was sent out to everyone, and there is a link on our money management slides that have that information on there. So again, make sure that you've got money that you can pay for your school lets, that you're paying for them maybe banking, like putting that money aside for the year to cover all the meetings that you've got planned. Make sure that you're booking them in advance so you can get the let. You might not always be available. And you might want to consider actually moving back on to doing online meetings. You might get more people engaging on it. Again, you can use that money if you want to pay for your Zoom license. That is what your parent council funding is for. Or maybe you want to do a hybrid, one online, one in person, whatever. Just make sure it's a suitable venue where it's private, you can hear everybody, it's accessible, and that it suits the majority of your group. No interruption. So that's why, again, think about your venue where you're going to hold your meeting, that you're not going to be interrupted. So whilst it might seem local to hold it in a local cafe or a local community group or something like that, is that the best place to be when you're trying to hold a formal meeting? Are you going to get interrupted quite often? Is it a busy place? So think about that. The same with the presence of appropriate people. So again, you don't really want to be discussing maybe some confidential information when you're surrounded by members of the public. But one thing I cannot stress enough is that good meetings run because you've got firm control of the meeting by the chair. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you're in that meeting bossing everyone about and what you say goes as the chairperson. It just means that you're keeping track of the meeting and you're keeping everyone focused on what they're there to do and what they're there to discuss. And also it means that there will be a clear outcome of that meeting. So as a chairperson, what I would certainly be doing is at the end of each agenda item, I always repeat back any actions that have come out of that and who those actions are assigned to. One, it's helpful for me as a chair to remind myself. Two, it's also helpful to make sure that the person who that action has been allocated to is happy to proceed with that. And three, it's really good for your minute taker as well, because then that will be minuted that that person has agreed to go off and say compile a letter or contact a company about fundraising or whatever it is, the action they have been assigned. It's always really good to reiterate that after each agenda item. And it's the chairperson is the person that should be making sure that there is a record of what has been agreed, recorded. So again, when you're going through meetings, always check in with whoever's taking your minutes, just to make sure that they got all the points at each agenda item, because it might not always be someone who was involved in previous discussions that's taking your minutes. So that is the job of the chair, to make sure that the meeting runs as smooth as possible. So another big element that's really important in terms of parent councils, parent councils need a constitution, really. It's your governance document that's going to lay out the functions and operations of your parent council. So really it's what guides you as a parent council. It sets out your purpose, your aims and your objectives of the group and how they'll be achieved. So it just means that everybody in the group knows what they're there to do and how to do it. And it's a key document that formalises the group and its right to be recognised by school and the local authority. And it's actually a really important group if you want really important paperwork if you want to apply for funding. So sometimes some of the grants and the funding that you see out there will be open to voluntary organisations, it will say. If you're a voluntary organisation, then you need a constitution, because then that's really what ratifies your group, as it says in that last bullet point, and that really makes your group official. So you will not be awarded any funding if you don't have that constitution. The constitution should also be reviewed or changed at AGM by members or at a special meeting for the purpose. So really with your constitution, what you need to be doing is reviewing that. I would generally say best practice is probably every 2 years. If you have any changes that you want to make to your constitution, then these suggested changes should be discussed in advance of your AGM, and they also need to be shared widely at your AGM for the whole parent forum to either agree on or object to. Again, I go into this in all detail on the AGM training, so I won't kind of labour the point too much here. Just some quick bullet points giving you pointers on what should be included in your constitution. I won't round them all off because, again, go back to that other video where we do go through every part of this bit by bit. But the main thing is how it's run, how many members are on it, how long parent council members should be elected, like chair, chairperson. These are all the things that on a daily basis me and Kathryn get inquiries about. And if you don't have this laid out really clearly, then that's when it gets a bit muddy, and it's very difficult then for a parent council to make decisions that reflect your constitution. So you end up coming to myself or Kathryn and asking us for advice. And we can't always give you clear advice either, because you're supposed to be running by what your constitution says. So just make sure that your constitution covers everything you need it to cover. We also provide examples of good constitutions and other policies that's listed here. So that link at the bottom of this slide, if you click on that when you open these slides, you'll get examples of constitutions and policies, and just pick and choose what works best for you. In terms of other policies that you might want to consider, a code of conduct is a must. Social and digital media policy is another must, because even if you're not using Facebook or X, as it's now called, Twitter, or anything like that, if you're using WhatsApp, still social media, so you need a social media policy. You also need a data protection policy, because I would assume as a parent council, by the very nature of your business, you're collecting even your members' personal data. So you're collecting their email address and their phone number. You might even go a step further and be collecting parent forum names and email addresses and phone numbers if you're doing fundraising, or if you're creating a mailing list or anything like that. So you'll need a data protection policy as well, because that information all has to be stored securely. The complaints policy, I would say that is a must as well. However, again, it's up to you, but every parent council that has ever come to us to deal with a complaint, they've not had a complaints policy. And me and Kathryn say, why have you not had a complaints policy? Well, I've never needed it. Well, you never need these things until you need it. So don't put yourself in that position, because it's a very difficult position to be in. So put these things in place before you even get started, or before you even need to deal with anything like that. Because then it's there for you to refer to when you need it, and then you're not scrambling around in the middle of a big drama trying to pull these things together and try to backtrack. The equality and fairness and the child protection policy are nice to have things, but again, that's up to you if you want to have them. There is examples of all of these on that link if you have a look at them. So another kind of element is a parent council that you should do. I mean, this is definitely a must. You should keep good housekeeping to ensure the smooth running of your parent council. And a way to be able to do that is to make sure that you have a generic parent council email address. I cannot say this enough. We still see, believe it or not, parent councils that are being run through a personal email address. I don't know why people would want to do that to begin with. I get why it's maybe a wee bit easier for them and it's something that they've already got set up. However, if you as a chairperson or a secretary then move on from the parent council, how are you supposed to pass all that information that you've collated over the last 2, 3, 4 years over to the next parent council member? Don't think it's particularly fair, because you should always really do a comprehensive handover. Also, how are you supposed to look back for anything. I mean, it's all going to be mixed up between your personal emails as well. And then even when you're like, so much as like if you're emailing the school or you're emailing for a funding application, it just looks a lot more polished and professional if it's coming from your parent council email address rather than your personal email address. It's also a lot more secure. So if you do have that data protection policy, you are supposed to be securing all your information from your parent council. So if you have a private email address for the parent council, everything's in the one place. It means then you can share the password for that account as well with multiple people if you need to do that, whereas you're not going to do that with your personal email. So it's just good housekeeping to have that in place. It also helps you keep track of your policies and your constitution. Again, that's another one that me and Kathryn get contacted about constantly. Can't find my constitution. We don't have it. Like I'm telling you now, at head office at Glasgow City Council, they're not sitting there with a folder of every parent council constitution across the city. So it's up to you as a parent council to keep track of all of your administration. And like I say, there's no point in reinventing the wheel. So things like posters for discos, surveys, invites, templates, if that's all going to a personal account, then your chances are you're not going to be able to find that to replicate it elsewhere. So if it was in a generic parent council email address, then all that stuff would be stored in there and you wouldn't need to go looking elsewhere. I would highly recommend that you use Gmail for your parent council email address if you're not already using it. And that's because, first of all, it's free. Second of all, you get secure document storage, which is called a G drive. So that's what we use. So all these links that you're seeing within this presentation, that's all on our G drive. And all we do is we change the permissions of that anyone with the link can access that document, or I can close that down and say, no one with the link, it's private, no one with the link can access it. It just means that when we do have meetings and we've got meetings minutes or any letters that I want to share, even just with my committee at Glasgow City Parents Group, then instead of having to upload multiple documents, I can share a link to a folder on our G drive and you can access that. You also get access to things like Google Forms, Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, YouTube, your Google Calendar for sending out meeting invites. So Gmail is a great option because it gives you all this additional value with your email address. Social media, this is one slide that I'm just going to quickly whiz through because we do have a separate social media training video on YouTube. But the main points with social media, which I think most parent councils are using now, is that, right, first of all, you don't need permission from the school to set up social media for your parent council. However, I would work in partnership with your school and discuss it with them, tell them what you're setting up, reassure them that you're going to manage it in an appropriate way where they can trust that it's not going to get out of hand, it's not going to become an area for venting. But ultimately, it's up to you what channel you decide to use, but you will probably be looking at the school, I would imagine, for information to be put on those social channels. So that's why you need to obviously make sure that you keep that strong partnership, but really the decision is with you as a parent council. If you are looking at social media or if you've already got it set up, make sure you've got that social media policy in place. Make sure everyone on your parent council has signed something to say that they have read and they agree to that social media policy. You can even put social media rules in place. You can pin them to your social media profile, or just make sure that they're saved somewhere that everyone can access them. And if you're, like I've already said this, if you're collecting information, which I suspect you all are, I would be really shocked if there was a parent council in the city that isn't collecting some sort of personal information, then you need to have a data protection policy in place. If you've got a Facebook group, for instance, or even a WhatsApp group, You might want to include rules for your group. Don't be afraid to block anyone or remove people for a good reason. But again, make sure you're letting them know that you're removing them or blocking them and why. So that's part of your rules. Don't just be because you've fallen out with someone and you don't want them on the page. Don't just block and remove them for no reason, because it's not personal. You still have a duty to report back to them. They're still part of the parent forum. One thing that personally drives me crazy on social media when I see it, when you get letters coming out from the school or a poster or something that you want to share with your parents on social media, try not to take a photo of it and share it, or take a screenshot and share it. It's okay to do that, but make sure that you've saved the document somewhere, whether it's your G drive or something, and you share the link to it. Now, whilst most people maybe with good eyesight might look at that photo and say, yep, I can see that and I can read it, okay. Some of these screenshots or photos that you take of letters can be quite fuzzy or out of focus, and it's difficult to see the detail in the letter. And then when you zoom in, that detail gets even worse. And then also remember there are people with visual impairments out there who rely on screen readers. Their screen reader can't read a letter from a photo. They need to be able to read the document out to them. So just try and remember that not everyone's going to be able to access that screenshot. If you still want to do the screenshot, that's all right, fine and good, but make sure you're doing that link through to the actual document, if it's a Word document or a PDF or something, so that people can actually read the letter properly itself. Remember, WhatsApp is a social media platform. I think we all forget that at times, and we forget to use the rules of social media for WhatsApp. WhatsApp can get quite out of control at times, where people obviously use it for a personal use. And when they're on parent council groups, I feel like they maybe get too comfortable and too relaxed. And at times the discussions can become quite out of control. There's inappropriate behaviour on it. You need to remember that when you're on a parent council, you're there representing the parents from that school. You're not there on a personal basis. So things like using foul language, calling people names, threatening other members of your group, talking badly about staff, pupils, or parents on the group, that all ties into that code of conduct. You should not be doing anything like that on your parent council WhatsApp. And if you are, I would be expecting either the chair or the vice chair to be stepping in and handling that situation, referring you back to the policies that you've agreed to, the Constitution, the Code of Conduct, and after a warning, if that behaviour continues, then I would be expecting the chair or the vice chair to be removing you from that WhatsApp group, because that is just not on. We're all volunteers, giving up our time. We're here to do the best for our school. We are not here to be abused or threatened or spoken to in any inappropriate way like that. Social media, I'll repeat this again, social media is also not for venting or sharing anyone's personal information, and that includes families and staff, includes pupils, it includes parents, carers, and any of the school staff. No matter how much a teacher has annoyed you or upset you, social media, well, your parent council social media is not the place for that conversation. By all means, go off and speak to a family member in private about it, or a friend, and vent if that helps. But you do not go on to a parent council or a school social media profile and start talking badly about anyone. It's entirely inappropriate. And again, I should be going back to the chair and the vice chair at that point, who should be handling that situation, referring you back to policies and nipping it in the bud. It should not be allowed to fester and grow into a big drama that at that point either myself or Kathryn then are called in to handle it. We're all adults and we all know how to behave appropriately. So for more social media information, use the link at the bottom where I go into things in a bit more depth, particularly around using Facebook groups and Facebook pages, etc. But overall, make sure you're engaging with your parent forum. A parent council is there not to just represent the views of the people in the room. You're there to represent the views across your entire school community. So make sure you're trying to do that to the best of your ability. Try and consult with your parents by sharing questionnaires, surveys, ask questions on your social media so you can get some quick responses. Be supportive of new members as well. This drives me insane because you think back to your very first meeting that you went along to as a parent council member when you didn't know anything about parent councils. And I guarantee you that you felt quite lost for the first few meetings. I know I did. And so remember, if there was an added layer to that, where maybe English isn't your first language, think back to how you felt. So make sure when you do have a new member join you, check in with them, ask them if they're keeping up with what's being discussed. Maybe after a meeting, follow up with a wee text message or a call. Ask them if there's anything else that you want to go over from the meeting. Ask them if they're being supported. Check if they're getting to the meeting okay. Maybe they need transport help, or maybe they need childcare. Remember, you've got that funding, and that's what that's there for, to help you remove all of these barriers. So just make sure you're being welcoming and supportive of new members, because we all want to keep them. We need new members on our parent councils. And in terms of your parent council, be available. So make sure it's clear how the parent forum can contact you. Make sure you're advertising that lovely generic parent council email address that you've created. Make sure it's out there. Everybody knows that there's an active parent council in your school and that you're there to represent them. And overall, just don't give up what you're doing. You're doing a great job, but just remember that it is a job and that you're there to get it done. And that's the end of Parent Council Essentials. So like I said, these slides will be linked in the YouTube description below. And then there's interactive links throughout it. And then please look through the other videos that we have on Parent Council training, where we go into things in a lot more depth. Thank you.